this has to do with Nedarim, because, Nedarim is about the power of words. The Rishonim define a human being as a medaber, a talker. The Targum on the pasuk Vayehi ha'adam lenefesh chaya, man was a living spirit, a living being, a living soul. The Targum says leruach memalala, a talking spirit. That's what defines humans. But you know that language is not just about conveying, describing, talking about, but actually, with words we create. If I make a promise, I created a reality, I created a commitment that didn't exist before. So words are creative. In a sense, just like Baruch She'amar V'hoya ha'olam, just like Haviyachol the Rebbeinu Shalom creates the world through language, Ba'asara ma'amoros nivra ha'olam, through words, man was given the koyach to be a medaber, not only to describe and to assert and to convey, but to create. And what we create is lo yachel devoroi, kechol hayotzim mipiv yaseh. We create a promise, we create a reality. And therefore, and as we see, Nedarim is a chefse, the Gemara says, which means that actually with my words, I affected not only myself, but I actually affected the objective reality. The oranges became usher on me, koinam. Nidrei hektish, avada, we say, amirosoi ligavoya, kimisirosoi laedyet. All I did is I spoke. And it was transferred from my bailus to hektish. Amirosoi ligavoya, kimisirosoi laedyet. So that's how we who have it Tselem Elokim were given the koyach of dibur. So this is really where kavod is at. When we talk about chilei kavod l'nesiyah Yisrael in the Parsha of Nedarim, it's because the Parsha of Nedarim is a Parsha of kavod. It's about the dignity of a human, that when I say something, it has value. Talk is not cheap. Actually, it's a matter of honor. One has to honor his word. And therefore, avada, not everybody's on the same level of kavod. We say that people who made their Tselem Elokim present in their life and live up to a higher standard of being who they ought to be, they are they have the real kavod. That's why bidvar melech shilton, we say dabor echad ledor. A leader is a dabor. But Moishel beruchoi miloiched ir, the daborishness. The leadership, the ability to talk and to create with words and language is something that begins with how one deals with himself. In any case, the Nesiyah Yisrael are those who reached a high level of Tamshilehu b'maisei yodecha, and therefore it's chilek kavod l'Nesiyah Yisrael. And that's really also why the Yachid Mumche could undo a neder. In other words, because the Yachid Mumche is somebody who reached a higher level in bringing forth his Tselem Elokim, therefore he has the power with Muterloch to be oiker a neder that already exists. So really the Yachid Mumche's ability to be Mefer Nedarim and the Chilei Kavod l'Nesiyah Yisrael are connected and come from the same root. I want to add that, Chazal's attitude towards Nedarim is ambivalent. Are we pro or against? It's not clear, because we say that a noider is ki'ilu bono bama. V'hamekayim ki'ilu hikriv oleha karbon. In other words, it's like shchutei chutz. It's why is that? Because the Torah is a Torah achas lager v'lo ezrach. When somebody takes upon himself Nedarim, he's separating himself from the klal. The Maral says that's why hanoider ki'ilu bona bama, because he's separating himself from the Torah achas that includes everybody. So, and that's why Nedarim are only, Chazal approve of Nedarim only in the very particular circumstances. So that's really the hemshech it could be to Parshas Pinchas, because in Parshas Pinchas took himself out of the Mishpat Echad L'Ger V'Lo Ezrach. He did a halacha that ein moirin kain. Kanos is a step out of the general Mishpat Echad. And right after that comes the minyan of the Shvatim, the general minyan of Klal Yisrael, the minyan of the Shvatim, which again emphasizes the togetherness, that we're all part of one big, wholesome picture, right? That comes after Pinchas. We count the Shvatim and we count the entire Klal Yisrael. Then comes the Parsha of Moyadim, which again, Moyadim is a lotion of hisva'adus, of getting together. The Rambam in Mitzvahs HaSeichof in the Sefer HaMitzvahs says that Moyadim is a time of kibbutz, a time when Yidden get together in the Beis HaMikdash. One of the functions of Aliyah L'Regel is not just Yireh Yeroeh Bein Adam L'Mokoim, but it also has the tachlis of bringing Yidden together. The Rambam says this in the Sefer HaMitzvahs. He says this in the Moreh Nevuchim. So we have Pinchas, who steps out and does the halacha of a moirin kain. Then we have the minyan of Klal Yisrael. Then we have the Parshas HaMoyadim. And then Parshas Pinchas signs off with a pasuk, Eile tasu laHashem b'moyadechem, levad mi nidrechem v'nidvoisechem. They are the Korbanos Tzibur that the entire Klal Yisrael participates in the Moyadim, which emphasizes our togetherness. But at the same time, there has to be room for personal growth and development. It's Eile tasu laHashem b'moyadechem, levad mi nidrechem v'nidvoisechem. There's also the everybody as a klal, and there's the yochid as a prat. So, personal development, but without losing touch with a big picture. Now, since in Nedarim there's a chash of pirud, so the Torah Dafka over here sets up the hierarchy. There's Moshe, there's the Roshei Hamatis, there's a Yochid Mumche, there's a husband and a wife, there's a father and a daughter. Because, yes, Nedarim are very, very personal, but we can't allow anarchy. There has to be, when we're talking Nedarim, we talk about the hierarchy of the Klal Yisrael, of the family, of the Yochid and the Yachad. And we learn them as the Zehadover, as Rashi says over here, the Zehadover that says over here, we learn the Zehadover from the Zehadover that says by Shchutei Chutz. We actually, from this, we learn that all of Torah was taught with this Seder. So this Zehadover of Nedarim really is connected with the Zehadover of Shchutei Chutz, because Hanoider Ki'ilu Bana Bama. And he's stepping out of the Mishpat Echad L'Ger V'Lo Ezrach. And that's why it, in a sense, reflects the idea of shchutei chutz. And therefore, there has to always be a balance between the togetherness and the personal growth and development. And this is all, this is what the Torah signs off with over here in the end of the Torah, because soon we're going to begin Mishnah Torah. But this is on the verge of entering Eretz Yisrael, where we're going to live as a nation. And that's why it's so important that we understand the importance both of personal growth and also the togetherness of the entire Klal Yisrael and the hierarchy that's important. There could be once in a while a Pinchas, but there's Rosh Amatis, there's Moshe, there's Rosh Amatis, there's a Baal Ve'ishtoi, there's a Avu Bitoi, and only if we keep all that in mind could we succeed in doing what we need to do. Okay, so that's one point. That's one point. Now I want to talk about something else. And that is, there's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim in Kapitel Dalet. I mean, maybe you'll figure out the connection between this and that. But there's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim that says, Hinoch Yofa Ra'ayosi. Hinoch Yofa Einayich Yoinim Mibad Litzamoseich Sarech Ke'eder Ha'izim Shegolshu Mehar Gilad. I'm sure you all know the title of this pasuk. So we talk about her hair is like an Eider of Izim, like a goat-like procession that's coming down from Har Gilad. Today we use different type of Meshalem Estama. But the Shinayich Ke'eder Haktzuvos, like a well-numbered flock coming up from the washing. She'olu min harachatzo. So it's b'chlal a shvera pasuk. What is the pasuk coming to say? But the Shir Hashirim Rabbah in the Midrash, there's a Midrash that says like this: Reb Yitzchak Pasar Karyeh. Reb Yitzchak explained this pasuk. The Milchemes Midyon, that this pasuk is talking about the Milchemes Midyon. Sarech ke'eder ha'izim adorim sheholchu le'Milchemes Midyon. The Sarech ke'eder ha'izim is talking about the Eider, the legions of warriors that went to war in the Milchemes Midyon. Sarech ke'eder ha'izim adorim sheholchu le'Milchemes Midyon. She'olu min harachatzo. What does it mean as they came up from the washing? Rav Huna Amar shelo hikdim echad mehem tefillin shel rosh letefillin shel yad. That no Jew put on his tefillin shel rosh before tefillin shel yad. She'ilu hikdim echad mehem tefillin shel rosh letefillin shel yad lo hoya Moshe meshabchon. If one of them, if any Jew would have put on the tefillin shel rosh before the tefillin shel yad, Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't praise them. V'lo hoyu oilin Misham b'shalom, and they wouldn't come up from the war b'shalom. So, I mean, Rebbeinu Shalom, I mean, what in the world is this about? I mean, we understand that it's very important that the Yidden that went to war, that they were holy Jews and they were proper Jews and they did the right thing. But what exactly is, why are we emphasizing the tefillin? Actually, the pasuk just says she'olu min harachatzo, but Rav Huna says that this represents the idea that they didn't put on the tefillin shel rosh before the tefillin shel yad. I mean, why is that about coming up from the washing? The fact that the tefillin are so important over here, Mistama, has to do with the fact that the Gemara says in Brachas Lavov, on the pasuk Hashem oiz la'amo yitein, that this pasuk is referring to tefillin. The oiz is the tefillin. Uminayin shatfilin heim oiz li Yisrael shenem avarohu kol amei haaretz ki shem Hashem nikra alecha v'yoru mimeka v'tanya Rebbe Eliezer HaGadol oimer elu tefillin shebe rosh. Okay. So since the tefillin are the oiz li Yisrael, and through them comes the v'yoru mimeka, so they're shaykh to the nitzachim, to the victory in the Mulcham. As I state mefurish in the halachas ktanis of the Rosh in Menachos Daf Lamed Vav, it says soch bein tefillah letefillah choyze me'orchei hamilchama. That if somebody spoke out between the tefillin shel yad and the tefillin shel rosh. So, mihoyish hayore v'rach halevov, according to the Manda Omar, that it means yore me'avera should be other. We say not only some big fat avera, sach ben tefillah l'tefillah, chayzim yeracham al-chama. So the Rosh over there says, she'al shem mitzvahs tefillin v'tikunon yiskayim ba'anshei ha-milchama v'torav zroya af kodkoid. That it's in the schus of the tefillin that are on the hand and on the head, that it's niskayim, the bracha of v'torav zroya af kodkoid, and therefore, as it's, the pasuk in Parsha v'zois ha-bracha, and therefore, if somebody was sach ben tefillah l'tefillah, he's chayzim yeracham al-chama. But we don't know why this detail, tefillin are very important for the ro kalami oretz kishem Hashem nikra alecha v'yoru mimeka, but we don't know why it's so important. This detail of loy hikdim tefillin shel roish l'tefillin shel yad, and why the soch bein tefillah l'tefillah undoes the whole thing. I mean, I still have the tefillin. And why is it that soch bein tefillah l'tefillah chayzim yeracham al-chama, and why is it that im hoya echad mehem magdim tefillin shel roish l'tefillin shel yad loy hayu oilem b'shalom? Okay, so it's like this. The pasuk says that loseis es nikmas Hashem b'midyon. So it's about avenging the nekama of Hashem b'midyon. Now, nekama, is a very dangerous thing. We're basically against nekama. So this is a very challenging war, a war of nekama. It says, Heicholzu me'itchem. Pashut pshat is Heicholzu me'itchem, that you should, how would you say that you should draft me'itchem anoshim latzova? I don't know how would the Webster or ArtScroll translate Heicholzu? I'm not sure, but there's an interesting taich from the Rebbe Rabbinim Pshischa says Heicholzu me'itchem means it's a loshon like leman yecholtzun yedidecha or achaltzehu va'achabdehu, which means to be released. Leheicholetz, to be released. Heicholzu me'itchem means release yourself of yourself. In other words, in order to go for a war of nekama, one has to be totally removed from self-interest. Heicholzu me'itchem, release yourself of yourselves. Anyway, so to totally empty ourselves out of our self, to get out of the me'itchem. So she'olu min harachatza is the pshat that we have to be totally washed and have no dust of personal interest, and only then are we ro'ui, only then are we worthy to take part in a war of nekama. So before we are oisik in v'ro'u kol amei ha'oretz ki shem Hashem nikra alecha, we first have to put on the tefillin shel yad, because the tefillin shel yad is lecha la'ois v'loy la'acherim la'ois. We cover the tefillin shel yad. The tefillin shel yad is personal. Only after betzina and bechadrei chadorim, one goes to war in his own personal internal war, and he comes out of that war b'choizek yad, out of the Mitzrayim ervas haaretz, through the l'shabei tavois umachshevois libeinu la'avodoso yizbarech, as it says in the l'shem yichud before hanochas tefillin. Then I can put on the tefillin shel rosh and come out in public. And v'ro kol ha'mei haaretz ki shem Hashem nikra alecha. But first take care of the shel yad. First take care of the l'chol lois v'loy la'cherim lois. The Seder Advarim is from inside out and not from outside in. First l'chol lois v'loy la'cherim lois, and then v'ro kol ha'mei haaretz. So only after olu min harachatza, only after we're totally washed, then we can come out and v'shakula ein bahem. Like the Gemara says, Kol haloi mei Torah b'seiser, machrizin olav begolui. But if there's no Tefillin shel yad before the tefillin shel rosh, the tefillin shel rosh has no chashivas, and the inside and outside have to be connected all the time without any hefsek, to the point that soch beit tefillah letefillah, choyze me'ochal milchama. If the outside war is not connected completely with the inside war and doesn't come from it and it doesn't flow from it, it's a war that shouldn't be fought. We say to him, Zayt Moichel, Yelech v'yoshev lebeisai. If you haven't taken care of your inside war, go back home and take care of what needs to be taken care at home before you go out and deal with external threats. First, deal with your internal issues. The cherev pifiois biyodom, as the pasuk says in Kuf Mem Tes and Tilim, has to be connected with the roimemois kale big roino. Only then could we be bekayim lasois nekoma bagoyim toichechois balaumim. My father says that, it says, roimemois kale big roino. Cherev is well. No lasois nekoma bagoyim toichechois balaumim. Lasois behem mishpat kosuv hodor hu lechol chasidov. Hallelujah. What does this mean? Because the emes nekama is a horrible thing. It's a disgusting thing. So we say, how could nekama be hodor lechol chasidov? How could nekama be something beautiful? Only if it's roimim moiskel begroinam, v'cheref bifiois biyodam. And the lasis nekama bagoyim is not for my own interest in taking nekama, but it's lasois bahem mishpat kosov. In other words, since the mishpat is kosov, and I want to make sure that it's clear that yesh din v'yesh dayan, that crime will not go unpunished, and the mishpat kosov will be neskayim. That kind of nekama, lasois bahem mishpat kosov, when I have no personal interest, that is hodor hu l'chol chasidov. And as the pasuk says, it's really a very harsh pasuk in Tilim that says, in Tilim Kapitel Nun Ches, it says, Yismach Tzadik, ki choza nokom. The Tzadik rejoices when he sees in the comment. Pa'amav yirchatz b'dam harosha, he washes his feet in the blood of the Rasha. V'yoymar odom, ach pri latzadik, ach yesh Elokim shoiftim ba'aretz. It's the same idea. I mean, how could it be that the tzaddik rejoices when he sees the nekama? But it's because the point is not that he has anything personal involved over here. It's in order that v'yoymar odom ach pri latzadik. He wants to make sure that the Shem Shamayim will be niskadish ba'olam. And v'yoymar odom ach pri latzadik, ach yesh Elokim shoiftim ba'aretz. That's all he cares about. It's ach. And that's the only thing. Then it's yismach tzadik ichos anokom. So this war of Midian, which is a war of nekama, there had to be a special emphasis of hicholzu meyitchem. And the emes, it says, Vayidab Hashem al Moshe nekoim nikmas b'nei Yisrael me'esem midyonim achay te'osef al amecha. Vayidab Moshe alone. So Rashi says, Afal pi sheshama shemisosei tluya b'dover osa b'simcha v'lo yichei. Even though he was told that he's going to die after this war is accomplished, nevertheless, he did it immediately. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu put Moshe Rabbeinu into such an assignment and tell him that he's going to die after the Milchemes Midian? This is also shaykh to the Olu Min Harachatzo. Only when Moshe Rabbeinu realizes that this war is the end of his life, and he nevertheless goes ahead and does it, do we know for sure that he has no personal interest in this nekama, and it's nekoimes nikmas Hashem b'Midian. And the same thing is Vayimosru mei alfei Yisrael elef lamate. Rashi says, Mishashamu shemisas Moshe tluya benikmas Midian. When Klal Yisrael heard that Misas Moshe is dependent on Nikmas Midian, lo yiratzu lalechas, they didn't want to go. Achenim bal korcha. So again, it wasn't a war that they were interested in. It was a war that they didn't want to be involved with. And nevertheless, they did it. And that's what qualifies this milchama of nekama. And otherwise it wouldn't be done. So it's always the tefillin shel yad before the tefillin shel rosh. It's about taking care of the inside before the outside, and that's the aside of all external battles that one needs to battle, one needs to fight. It comes only after the internal battle. Moishel beruchoi miloiched ir. Okay, so how does that connect with the first thing we said? I'm leaving it to Berman. You'll figure it out. Okay, so now the thing is like this: Vaita, I just want to share with you, that Gidroi Tzoin Nivne Limikneinu. It seems like it wasn't really an issue that the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven wanted to be an Ever Hayarden. It wasn't wrong. That in itself needs to be explained. But the taina that Chazal have is, as Rashi says, that they put their behemoths before their children. They spoke about the Gidroi Tzoin Nase Limikneinu, and then Orim Letapenu. Rashi says that this was the taina Nachlo Mevuhelas. Nachlo Mevuhelas. So you know that in Havdalah we say Kaspenu V'Zarenu Yarbe Kachol. We put the money before the children. So there's a tshuva in the Chasam Sofer in Arachaim Siman Samach Zayin who deals with this. Hayatochen. He asks. We see by the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven that this is the wrong way to go, and he says that here there's a particular reason, because the thing finishes with Yarbe kachol v'kakechovim balaylo. So he says that we want that kechovim is greater than chol. We want our children to be like stars. So therefore, since the soiger has to end with kechovim balaylo, we say kaspenu v'zarenu, so that the kaspenu should be the chol should go on to the kaspenu, and the kechovim should go on the Zarenu, azoy zok the Chasam Sofer. But I just want to share with you that there's a fascinating thing. If you look in the Vayiten Lecho, that he didn't say Matzah Shabbos. It's we take the psukim of Baruch Tancha u'Mishartecha, Baruch Pri Vitnecha Pri Ad Masecha. In the Torah, it says first Baruch Pri Vitnecha Pri Ad Masecha, and then Baruch Tancha u'Mishartecha. But in the Siddur, in the Vayiten Lecho, it says fakert. It says first the Baruch Tancho Mishartecho, and then it says the Baruch Privitlecho. So in the Sefer HaChaim of Reb Chaim, whose brother was the Maharal Prague, he was one of the Gdolei Hador. He has a whole Sefer Havikuach with the Ramah. So in the Sefer HaChaim, which actually he wrote during a Magefa, as you see in the Hagdama of the Sefer HaChaim, that he was locked up for a while because of a Magefa, and he had some kind of a vision that this is the time that he should write his drush. Anyway, he writes over there like this, that based on the Gemara in Tainus that says that Osur l'shamesh mitosoi b'shnasra ovoin, and he actually adds, as if it says in the Gemara, Kadesha lo yireh bonov b'tzar. The Parsha in the Gemara, and the way all the Rishonim learn, it's that a person shouldn't have hana in a shnasra ovoin, in a time of famine. But he writes, Osur l'shamesh mitosoi b'shnasra ovoin shaloi yireh bonov b'tzar. In other words, you're bringing children into a world of poverty, and that's irresponsible. And that's why also l'shamish mitasei b'shnas re'oven shelo yireh banav b'tzar. So he says that in Yomim Kitikunam, he says Avada, the children come before the money. That's why in the Torah it says Baruch Pri Vitnecha Ufriad Masecha, Baruch Tancha Mishatzecha. But now that we're in Golus, he says we really have to worry first about the Panasa. And that's why he says we say first Baruch Tancha Mishartecha, and then Baruch Pri Vitnecha Ufriad Masecha. That's what it says in the Sefer HaChaim. We could also say that for the same reason in Havdalah. We say Kaspenu V'Zarenu, based on the same principle. Okay, having said that, I say one more thing. In the end of the Parsha, it says, what does it say? It says, No. It says like this. The end of Parshas Matos. It says, V'noivach holach, v'yilkoid es knos, v'es b'noiseo, v'yikro lo noivach b'shmoy. So, under the law, there's a mercha kfula, which is only appears, I think, 5 times in the Torah. So it's v'yikra, lo. So what is this? What is the idea of this mercha kfula? I just want to suggest that there are 2 ways to read this pasuk. You could say, Vayikra lo Noivach Bishmoy. He called the city Noivach in his own name. Or you could say, Vayikra lo Noivach, Mr. Noivach called it Bishmoy in his name. So the question is, if the Noivach is Mr. Noivach, or the Noivach is the city of Noivach. Yeah, it adds up to the same bottom line, but the question is if Vayikra lo Noivach Bishmoy or Vayikra lo Noivach Bishmoy. So I think that the Mercha Kfula separates the law from the Noivach. In other words, without the Mercha Kfula, it would be Vayikra lo Noivach Bishmoy. But now that we have the Mercha Kfula on the law, so it's Vayikra lo Noivach Bishmoy. In other words, so the Noivach is really the city, not Mr. Noivach. V'noivach holach v'yilkoid es knos v'es b'noiseo v'yikro lo noivach b'shmoy. Okay, Rabbi Say, I